Today we'll be floating down an area of the Columbia River that's incredibly important habitat for Chinook salmon, but it's also North America's most contaminated site. This is an area that was used to make weapons-grade plutonium for decades, ever since the middle of World War II. This is the place where they made the plutonium for the Nagasaki bomb.
Now, if we don't hold the federal government accountable for nuclear waste cleanup at Hanford, the results could be catastrophic. To understand why, you're going to need a bit of history. In 1943, the federal government selected a huge area along the Columbia River as a top-secret site for the Manhattan Project to create plutonium for nuclear weapons. The government removed Native Americans who had lived along the Columbia River for centuries and evacuated the small communities of Hanford and nearby White Bluffs. Within a year, the U.S. built the world's first large-scale nuclear reactor and eventually built 9 nuclear reactors on the banks of the river to create the most destructive bombs in human history. During the rush to build bombs, the U.S. also created dangerous nuclear waste, radioactive pollution associated with cancer, genetic mutation, and other grave health effects. At the time, storing that waste in underground steel tanks might have seemed good enough. Now, as the waste eats through steel and concrete, we're left with a massive ticking time bomb, staved off only by the ongoing cleanup efforts that began in 1989.
We really didn't know what we were getting ourselves into back in 1989. The other thing that we've discovered is there was a lot more waste out there than we ever anticipated.
This is a place where the Department of Energy actually stored spent nuclear fuel for years and years, and to the point where it began to degrade and break down and turn into this toxic radioactive sludge that's very close to the river. And it doesn't just stop here. What's beyond, far out of sight, miles into the Hanford area, are these huge tanks full of very highly radioactive sludge and liquid waste. And these tanks are leaking.
Time is not on our side when we're talking about these tanks aging and continuing to possibly leak into the soil.
On this pollution mapping tool released by federal scientists, you can see real-time nuclear and chemical waste data. While contaminants from the 9 reactors along the river pose the most immediate threat, the real sleeping giant rests at the center of Hanford. Here, 177 buried tanks, many as large as an Olympic swimming pool, hold some of the most dangerous pollution on Earth. Dozens of tanks already leak nuclear waste, and pollution is creeping towards the Columbia River and groundwater. We're simply running out of time. If the federal government doesn't clean up the waste, more radioactive pollution will reach the river.